Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Moving Pictures podcast series. Just as a bit of information about what we're doing here, we are Film Hub NI. I'm Sarah, and Hugh has also joined us here. Hello, Hugh.
Hello.
Hello, and we are working on a project which is funded by Northern Ireland Screen, supported by the Department for Communities, which is a series of 8 podcasts which will cover everything for film exhibitors who are thinking to try and bring their work online. So we're covering everything from programming to platforms to evaluation, audience development, and we have an extra special bonus podcast which we will then talk about how important it is to actually get people back into the cinema, because that is our reason to exist, and also the reason to exist of our guests as well today. But before that, these podcasts can be accessed as standalone podcasts, or you can listen to the whole series. You can start from 1 and we're now on 2, so that's a good way to do it. And they will also be available on YouTube. If you're listening and not watching, you can share the news that they will be available on YouTube, and they'll be fully captioned for people to access there. So yeah, we'll get started with our guest today. We're really pleased to be joined by 2 stalwarts of the programming fraternity in Belfast. Would that be a good way to announce you? Yeah. So we've got Michael.
Yeah.
Stalwarts.
Sure. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah.
What are their names?
Oh yes, I'm going to give them their names. Sorry. So we've got Michael Staley from QFT, who's been working very hard on the QFT player. Hello, Michael.
Hello, how's it going? Nice
Good.
to see you, Michael Stalwart. Go with
Michael
that.
Stalwart.
Where are you, Michael?
I'm in sunny North Belfast.
Lovely.
Just off the Antrim Road in a pink room.
Is it actually sunny, Michael?
No, it's not. No.
I
just thought it. I mean, you can't really tell. I thought I'd try and pretend just to make it.
It's very nice. Do you tend to read the Financial Times in that room?
Yes, I do. With a pipe usually.
Yeah, lovely.
That works for
and
me. Yeah.
Also joining us is Rose Baker. Hello, Rose.
Hello.
Who from WANDA Festival and Belfast Film Festival.
Indeed, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, both of you. Where are you, Rose? Are you in Belfast?
I am. I'm in South Belfast in a terrace. It's all very exciting.
It is. Well, we like to give people a sort of geographical place that we're not just beaming in from the internet.
Oh, yeah.
So, Sarah, thank you very much for that introduction. Today's podcast is really about programming, about choosing film and about developing programs that work and work for audiences, also attract new audiences as well, to well-known festivals and well-known venues, of which Michael and Rose both are working with and working for. So I suppose, Sarah, shall I start off?
Yeah, crack on.
Michael, so QFT is a icon of independent cinema, especially in Ireland. What was the driving force behind the QFT player when things started to close down in March? Was it a bit like poacher turned gamekeeper? Was it a complete reversal to go online?
Well, it was a reversal. I think we just had, I think, our most successful ever year in terms of box office, and we just had our most successful film, which was Parasite at the start of last year. It's the best film in terms of box office we've shown at QFT. So I think when this suddenly happened, what we didn't want to do was just disappear and mothball QFT. We didn't want to just, and in fact, we'd never even really talked about that. So it was interesting that the idea of the player came about very quickly. We'd sort of been talking in very vague terms about doing something like that, but we hadn't really got beyond just chatting about, wouldn't it be nice if we had some sort of online platform? Then this happened, and then I suppose the reason we did it so quickly was because an opportunity arose, which was the Belfast Ensemble were going to show Abomination, a DUP opera, online. They'd recorded it at the Lyric. I think the version they recorded was sort of more just as a record rather than something they would shows anywhere. But it was well shot and well edited, looked good, sounded good. So I got wind of this, that they were going to put it online like in a week's time. And this was sort of about a week after QFT shut in March. So anyway, we managed to sort of, we spoke to Connor at the Belfast Ensemble and they liked the idea and we got it together very quickly. We actually, Abomination was shown on the 3rd of April and QFT shut sort of 2 weeks before that. So we launched QFT
very quick
like
turnaround.
2 weeks pretty much after, and had it all set up. So in that process, we didn't necessarily think we would do as much as we have now done over the past year. That was just, let's start with this and then we'll see how we go. So one problem we had pretty instantly was that we had no income. Our box office had obviously just gone from a healthy amount to zero.
Hero to zero.
So when we were looking for a platform, it was, well, okay, we basically don't have any budget for this at all. We need something that is cheap or free and that is user friendly, easy from a technical point of view, because we were doing it, in this case, me. So, didn't want it to be something incredibly complex in terms of its sort of back end technology, So we ended up with Vimeo OTT, which we just pay for the upload time, literally how long it takes to upload the film files. So it's quite a small amount. And it works pretty well with free content. It almost works like YouTube with free content. And it's one click and you can watch stuff without having to log in. But we could also sell stuff. We could do rentals or purchases of content. So
Rose, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Rose, I was just going to say, QFT were one of the first venues to get online, and certainly the shorts program at Belfast Film Festival was one of the first big events. In fact, the last live launch event we all had was the launch of the film festival, and it was a bit like, will it happen? Will it happen?
Somebody shook my hand.
I know.
I remember it vividly.
There was people hugging and all. Imagine. And so you obviously when the festival was cancelled essentially at the beginning, you moved very, very quickly though. I mean, I think it was a couple of weeks as well, wasn't it? It was very quick. It was the start of April, if I remember.
It was. I remember, like, I was actually thinking about this before coming on the podcast, and like I remember it all like it was yesterday, because I think I'm a bit traumatized. You know what I mean? Like, it's just I remember it was actually Friday the 13th of March when we all went home from the office for the last time and stopped working together in the office. And then it was from that day on, it was, working from home. And obviously that's just really jarring to go from a really sort of busy office festival. Festival life is hectic, and when you're that close to the festival, you're surrounded by people and in an open plans kind of space, loads of meetings, and to go from that to just being at home on your own, it just was so unreal. But I mean, it was, I think, just like Michael was saying, like for us at the film festival, it was basically a kind of a gut reaction to continue in whatever form that we could. It was also a very quick decision to postpone the festival. It's, we obviously weren't going to be able to have it in its sort of traditional form, and that just had to change. But of course, it was so important to keep the spirit of the festival alive, and that was in April in the form of the shorts program, mainly. It was short form is actually sort of lends itself quite well to online viewing, and there were it was a very successful online program, and I think that's because short form is sort of really good for online viewing. It's sort of people can dip in and out, you know what I mean? Also, it was before people kind of started to geo-block and things like this. And it was so early on in the pandemic, from sort of like mid-March to the beginning of April. I think the 1st of April was the festival opening date, I think it is, or was. And
that sounds about right.
First or second.
And so that's like 2 weeks, and so then we kept the shorts date the same that Saturday, and we showed the shorts program. It was the Irish Shorts Competition and the official selection programs of Irish shorts, and they ran for 24 hours. Or no, sorry, it wasn't 24 hours. It was from 10 a.m. to midnight actually on one day, and that sort of real focus drove a lot of viewers from all over the world, which was amazing.
And there was a big buzz online about, I think, because as you said, you were one of the first kind of big events, certainly locally, to very quickly do something. Like, I mean, I was watching the tweets coming in and, all that stuff. And it was, you had a massive audience for this.
It was a really good, exciting kind of moment, and the support that we got, we really felt that there was so much support for the festival, and for the films and the filmmakers, and the filmmakers were amazing. They were so supportive. They had, they didn't blink an eye. They were like, yeah, please put it online, and
so there wasn't any. I mean, that would be a role of a programmer, is to make sure about sort of, talk to the filmmakers and all that sort of stuff. But there wasn't any sort of, no, we're not doing it online, or.
Nope, there wasn't. I mean, the way Belfast sits in the sort of festival calendar is, it means that a lot of the shorts that come to us are kind of at the end of their kind of like festival journey. So they've played in Cork, they've played in Galway, they've played, it's and they are coming to us. I mean, not all of them, but like, there is that kind of vibe sometimes, and so a lot of the filmmakers, were quite easygoing about that. We did have, I think there were one or two filmmakers who were at the beginning of promoting their film. So we put, I think we didn't have Eventive, we didn't have like geo-blocking at that time. So I mean, it's so mad now to think of it, but it was on Vimeo. It was Vimeo, and I think the films that were brand new were watermarked. Like there was a slight watermark. So we did obviously want to cater to each film and their needs, each sort of little I was going to say little production company. They're not little production companies, they're short films. It doesn't mean everything is short, but like so it was definitely really important to have all the filmmakers on board and do it the way everybody was happy with.
Michael, you have done a few things directly with filmmakers, with John T. Davis and various people. How did you find working, taking aside the distributors and stuff that you work with, what about directly with filmmakers for the KFT player?
Well, most of the stuff we've shown on there, I've been dealing directly with filmmakers or small production companies who've produced the films. I mean, we've shown now, I think it's around 300 films. Now, about half of those were Cinemagic Young Filmmaker films. So of our own stuff, it's about 120, 30. And out of those, we've only shown about 30 rentals. So that's dealing with UK and Irish distributors.
Right.
So most of the rest, which is sort of a significant number, have been dealing directly with the filmmakers. And that's been, I mean, much like Rose says, I mean, more often than not, they're very happy to have their work shown. And in actual fact, a lot more people will see their work this way than would see it if we showed it once in screen 2 of QFT.
On Sunday afternoon sort of thing.
You know, where ordinarily the most we could get is 91, and you know, during these socially distant times, it's, you know, maybe 20. So now we can show a film. Well, for example, the Curzon project is a good example. It's being watched now about 2,500 times on QFT Player over the course of its life on there. And it's
Who produced that?
I have no idea.
Fantastic producing.
Fantastic producer.
So it's been things like that are lovely. That just we're very lucky at QFT to have a working relationship with John T. Davis, who, if people don't know, he's a wonderful documentary filmmaker from Northern Ireland, who's been making films since the sort of mid 70s, late 70s. We did a retrospective of his work about four years ago.
With the IFI.
And I happened to have, I knew all the films were on. John had a hard drive with all his films on. So at the start of this, after we did Abomination, I was like, okay, well, what else can we do? So rang John, and he's like, yeah, sure. So the films that he owned the rights to, we put on QFT Player gradually over the course of several months. And that's been great. I mean, some of those, like Dust on the Bible, for example, is a film about sort of Belfast street preachers, has been watched. I think it's the second highest viewing of anything on there, almost 3,000 times.
Right.
And as Rose said as well, it's around the world. I mean, I think it's about 50 odd countries represented in terms of who's watching this stuff.
And I suppose the question, you know, you've been doing this for what, a year? Yeah, a year?
Almost. We'll have to have some sort of birthday celebration.
Cake. But in terms of, is it a case of taking what you can get and making a program out of that? Or do you feel that you're also curating and you're also kind of...
Well, I think it's curating from what we can get. So it was interesting, I think at the start of this, there was a lot more enthusiasm for, I feel like there was a lot more enthusiasm for online stuff. There was this idea that we're all sitting around, we've no idea what to do. So there was the sheer volume of stuff at the beginning, and the appetite for it was greater, I think. But sorry, what was the question, Hugh?
Well, it was just really about you know, has been a process of sort of cobbling together what you could.
Oh yeah, sorry,
what was available, as opposed to sort of, you know, I can do a run of, you know, French classics next week, or, you know, that sort of stuff. You don't have the freedom.
No, don't have I've tried not to cobble as much as I can.
Cobble seems pejorative, Michael. And I don't want you to take it.
No disrespect.
It's a skill. It's making a shoot. You know.
But it's been interesting. I think people might imagine, perhaps, that it's easier to get stuff to show online than it is to get stuff to show in a cinema. But actually, the opposite is true, in my experience. Especially when you're not an established online platform like Mubi or Curzon Home Cinema or the BFI Player. It's been very. I've had lots of no's, basically, especially for library titles.
Yeah.
It's any sort of older title, which I think people might think it's easy to get. You know, well, it's on Netflix, so sure you could. It's an old film on Netflix. I'm sure you could get that, but actually, that's proved to be very difficult, and I think that's a combination of, if the films weren't necessarily released in sort of VOD times, you know, getting hold of the materials, the actual files, is difficult. But also some of the larger distributors aren't, you know, are very security conscious, as they should be, about their products. And so in our case with Vimeo OTTs, some of them aren't totally convinced by it. And So in some cases, it's sort of hit a brick wall. But what I think for me, for QFT Player, what I wanted it to be once we got going was to focus on exclusive stuff as much as we could, and local stuff, Northern Irish and Irish films.
Mhm.
And if I look at the films on there that have been the most successful, they're all Northern Irish, I think, in fact, specifically. And that's really gratifying. I think it's an experiment for us. It's very different from what we do in the cinema. And we're absolutely not trying to replicate the experience of going to QFT. We know it's a completely different beast.
Yeah.
But it's been gratifying to see the numbers. I mean, I think the total plays on the Player to date is about 36,000, maybe 37,000 now.
It's really good to reach those audience, but they're obviously, what do you lose with the online work? Belfast Film Festival is a very social event, and going to the QFT is a very social event. Rose, what do you feel that, there's benefits? Obviously we can reach people, and there's content and stuff. But what do you feel that you lose a bit by the online stuff?
Well, I mean, there's so much really that isn't there, the whole kind of festival atmosphere is hard to recreate online. It's definitely something that you can there are ways of doing things, creating like events. You can do live Q&As, for example, and I think it's really important to do live events when you're a festival online, to still kind of have that feeling of things happening in real time, and something that you can only see once,
exclusivity.
And exactly, yeah. And so, but it's not the same, it's not the same as being there. And part of my job for Belfast Film Festival is basically to hang out in the QFT every year. And
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's great. I look forward to it and really enjoy it. And you see like so many people. There are people I only see once a year during the film festival at the QFT. Yeah. And it's a huge amount of sort of personal interaction that you can't really do that online. The chance encounters and networking for filmmakers and other professionals, the social occasions for audience members. I'm going to cry now, but like, but like, it's it's just different, but I have to stress that like, there's been real innovation in in the festival and in WANDA as well, really trying to create that sense of an event, a live event, and being there with other people, all at the same time. So I mean, for example, at Belfast Film Festival, we for the shorts, usually there's an announcement, in the QFT bar, and that's where everybody gets together, and that's where the winner is announced, and the judges, like yourself, Sarah. Sarah was a judge in the shorts in 2020. But so we get together and do that, and so we replicated that online, and we asked everybody to come and do a Zoom and have a drink, online. So it was and you could feel that everybody was excited and everybody was on board, and that was really good. It's there are ways of using the technology to keep these moments alive for everybody.
I have to say though, as the person who was reading out the answer to the winner, having like 50 Zoom people staring at me waiting for the answer was pretty stressful.
I'm sure it was. Did you feel intimidated in any way, Sarah?
A wee bit, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Hopefully we can. No, it was good. And from from a judge's perspective, having the chance to watch all this stuff and using Zoom to talk to the other judges and stuff, we just kind of we were sort of making it up as we went along. But you were brilliant in getting everything ready for us, so it definitely was hats off to you for getting that up and running so quickly.
I do think that the sort of appointment view, or this film is going to be at 7 p.m. on a particular date, and that's your focus, is that time and day, has worked really well for us, sort of in that slight way of trying to recreate going to the cinema. It's at a particular time when there's no reason why it has to be at that time, in our case, I'm sitting here literally making it live, 6:59 or whatever.
Turn the projector on.
But what has been, speaking of missing things, what was really, really gratifying, as successful as the QFT player experiment has been, is when we reopened QFT in August, and then we closed again in October, but was just the number of people who came back, instantly, and the kind of, outpouring of love for QFT and going to the cinema. And I know that if we'd shown those same films on the player at the same time, we wouldn't have had the same response or numbers, because it was sort of gratifying that the business we're in of running a cinema is what people want us to do ultimately, and this is just, this QFT player thing is, as much as I enjoy it, I think it's great, is sort of sitting alongside that as a sort of,
I mean, WANDA, sorry, Michael, just to ask about WANDA very briefly, Rose, just the idea that, that is a very specific community of people. It's a feminist film festival, that's in the title. So it just has a specific theme, I suppose.
Yeah.
Have you found that you're able to replicate that kind of feeling of kind of, common interest?
Yeah, we have been. I think, this is our first time as WANDA doing this online, and I think, yes, we have. The festival vibe is still there, in the program. We've been able to continue with our main aims of the festival, through the programming this year. Online hasn't stopped us being able to do that. We've got a premiere, we've got archive film, we've got international film, and everything that we really sort of strive to do every year is that's being fulfilled. It's sorry, I've forgotten your original question.
Well, it was really about that sense of community that Michael was
sorry.
That shared interest.
Yeah, I think what we've really noticed is like how good kind of online communities are, and I think that's our community is very mixed, and the festival audience is very diverse, but it seems like online is really buzzing, and we've had like so much response. It's almost like a kind of a work in progress, you know what I mean, because this is the first time we're doing it, and we're feeling our way with it, and I think we still, we'll see whether because one concern, I suppose, is that you do miss people who just aren't online, and I guess that comes back to Sarah, what you were asking about what's missing, which we don't really know yet, with WANDA, like how it will be, but we don't, you don't want to exclude possible audience members just by being online,
Yeah,
but
on the flip side, sorry, Rose, we were just talking earlier as well that there's kind of data coming out now with engagement of online, and that actually a lot of work is reaching disabled audiences, or audiences that would have considered, hard to reach, or I like to use different to reach, and it's while you may be losing some in that way, there may be other benefits about the people who just simply, for whatever barriers there are, might be able to now engage with that.
Yeah, well, that's it, and I think, as you say, like there are things that you just you maybe just wouldn't have predicted, that happen in a very positive way. But from the response that we've had so far, it seems like the community is live and well, and coming with us,
Brilliant. sorry, go ahead, Michael.
It's just one of the things I find a bit frustrating about this whole process of getting films for online is in terms of accessibility and say hard of hearing subtitles. So some of the distributors do provide a subtitled track that we can upload, and it's there. You can turn it on and off. But I've been surprised at the number who just don't have that available. And most of our films, short films, say, or the John T. Davis films, which are just video files that he's given us, there's no subtitle track, and it's definitely part of it where we can't help but fall down. We would put them up there if they're available. I think we're looking into some ways of getting some of our stuff subtitled. Because
I mean, it is an issue around, smaller operators entering, what people, so expectations of Netflix or a movie or even BFI player and stuff like that, is that there will be subtitles and there will be, captions and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it is something to kind of, so it's something of an issue, accessibility is there, but it's also making sure that accessibility is 100%, not just a little bit. The sort of, I suppose the question really sort of finally for both of you as programmers is where does this go from here in terms of online? I mean, we are presuming, of course, that we will at one day be back in full houses and festivals and people slurping.
Can you imagine that? I almost missed the QFT rustle, the kind of plastic, the kind of random plastic bag rustle that you'd get. I almost missed that.
Almost.
And
almost,
that sense of sort of the full houses and the fun of a full house. What role does online still play in a festival, for example, or a venue? As programmers,
I would say that online is kind of here to stay, really. I mean, as like going forward, obviously no one has a crystal ball. Like no one really knows how things are going to play out, and I think the way the Belfast Film Festival anyway sees things now is really to have like a dual approach and have live screenings absolutely where possible, but online is kind of with us now, and that's kind of how it's just going to be. But I think it's actually a good thing. I don't think the sort of online just becoming so massive is necessarily bad. I'd love obviously to see us having live events, but again, there, as Sarah was saying, there are issues with accessibility and who you can reach with with online, and you can't just it actually would be unfair to take that away again, in some ways.
But so, I suppose it's also about balancing out value. So there's a kind of sense of the premium of the live event and being there and being in the room and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we're all, cinema goers. We all know that feeling where, you were there and it was a special evening and, you couldn't replicate that online. And
absolutely. Like there's stuff that you can't replicate online at all. But then I've just realized there's something I should mention. The thing about, there are those like great live events when you can have somebody, like when we had John Cusack, a couple of years ago, like, those events are just, you just can't, there's no way of kind of doing those things online. But at the same time, if you are online, there's a possibility of getting a greater number of really special guests because it fits in with their schedule. They don't have to travel. So there are pros and cons all over the place. And it's basically just about, as you say, value for the audience in whatever way you can bring it to them,
I think, Rose is completely right. It's going to be a sort of hybrid version of this with when cinemas are open again, of some events in the cinema and some events online, depending on what they are and what's appropriate. I mean, one of the decisions we made when QFT reopened in August was to just keep QFT Player going. we didn't stop doing it, and I would still get 2 or 3 new things a week, even when the cinema was open, which was difficult when I'm also programming the cinema, but we managed it. We just said, well, let's just keep these going alongside each other. And I think so we sort of have plans to sort of grow the player in some way and looking at other platforms.
Well, I suppose it's also about sustainability and what's the word I'm looking for? When you become tough. I can't remember the word. Resilience. That's the word.
Resilience. Yeah.
There's a resilience behind it in the sense of, if something like this happens again. I mean, the pandemic may go, its fury may go away, but there will still be outbreaks and there will still be things.
I mean, there are positives to take out of it. I mean, we all had to suddenly learn very quickly how to do this stuff that we maybe hadn't done before. I mean, I certainly hadn't run, an online streaming platform. But just watching it. But now I have an idea of how to do that, and the same it'll be with Rose and the film festival and WANDA. It's like, oh well, we now know it's part of our toolkit now, and we can
it's another way to connect with audiences, whatever happens.
I suppose as time goes on as well, distributors and content providers, for want of a better word, will start to engage with how much their content is available.
So
it opens the possibilities of programming up to you.
I think hopefully that the thing that probably needs to change about that is the pricing models for VOD stuff. If that's like a premium VOD title is £10 to rent, which is fine if you're used to going to the cinema in London, where that's cheaper than a cinema ticket, but that's like £3 more than our full price ticket. And I think I certainly think I would expect to pay more for an in-person physical event than I would for an online rental. I think I would anyway. So hopefully the pricing thing will, adjust. Some of the distributors are coming down in their rental prices, which is good, but it's sort of at early days, really. I mean, I know there've been platforms around for a while, like Mubi and Curzon, obviously.
And
but now
BFI Player, I should mention, obviously.
And BFI Player, obviously, but it's now there are, more people dipping their toes in these waters, so it's sort of it'll evolve. But it's definitely here to stay. I don't think we're just going to go, cinemas are open, we don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah, something just when you're talking about price there, there was a festival, Hugh, can you remember horror festival in Wales, who were talking at something we were this way up, and they did this really nice thing with pricing. Now it's more obviously for sort of community non-theatrical venues. They had like a rate. We were talking about price and we should really say in general, without giving any commercial secrets away, nobody's really making any money out of streaming unless you are Netflix or Prime or anything.
Even they aren't making much.
So we need to sort of set expectation to anybody listening that he's thinking about doing this. But there was something they came up with a really, I wish I could remember their name, a really clever way of pricing, where they just had, so you could, if the film was £3 or whatever, you watched it, but if you wanted to support the festival, you could buy a couple's rate if there was 2 people watching, or 3 people or 4 people. So it was just a really nice, the one thing about all this is it's really hard to track exactly how many eyes are on something, because you could have 10 people in a room, or maybe not, only if you're in a bubble or whatever, but or you could have one person, so it's very hard. Not illegally, illegal film watching raves somewhere. But it is quite hard to track, and we will cover kind of evaluation and monitor and stuff on one of the other podcasts. But I thought was a really kind of small intervention, but a really kind of really innovative way to look at pricing and stuff. Sorry, I got carried away because I got excited by that thing that I remembered.
I mean, I think there will be. I mean, both Rose and Michael are examples of programmers who have had to pivot very quickly and to adapt and to meet challenges. I suppose. I mean, it's the whole case of challenge, and everything will be about adapting for the next few years. Adapting to maybe less audiences in life and more audiences online, or I
I
think
think
it's
that's definitely true. I mean, we've had to not just adapt to closing, but also at QFT, reopening with like no notice, or closing again with 6 hours notice, and all this. So we've had to look. Yeah, it's been a year of adapting to situations, definitely, and I think we've done all right.
Yeah. Well, I think audiences obviously have responded to it anyway. So
yeah.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for your input today.
Thank you.
Sarah, was there anything else we needed to mention, sort of top and tail the podcast?
No, you listen to the whole series, or listen to this one, listen to them all. We're all here to support your every need with online work.